Fellas, there are absolutely massive changes coming to the PvE sandbox in Season 21. The other day, Bungie announced a slew of changes to our underperforming roaming supers. Changes to some of our neutral abilities, as well as some updates to some of our aspects, increasing their fragment slots from 1 to 2. Today, guys, we're going to be taking a deep dive into these changes coming specifically for hunters. Now, don't worry, warlocks, titans, we're definitely going to get to you guys. But we had to separate these videos considering just how girthy the information actually is. Now, starting with our supers. Both Golden Gun supers for Gunslinger are receiving a 20% buff inside of PvE. Now, I always thought Golden Gun was actually pretty decent inside of PvE, but with this 20% buff, you may actually have a scenario in which popping a Golden Gun to clear a room is actually optimal now. Now, we have two different versions of Golden Gun, Marksman as well as Deadshot. Marksman is our 3-shot version of Goldie. It deals increased precision damage, and it can over-penetrate targets and simultaneously creates orbs of power on precision hits. Marksman also benefits from being radiant. Now, if you're looking for a super for just purely boss DPS or even like shredding a champion, this is definitely the option. Now, it was already pretty good inside of PvE, but now with that 20% buff, which is applicable everywhere, it's going to be great. By the way, guys, we're going to be doing live testing for all of our supers and all the associated exotics, and then ranking the top damage supers in the game pre and post Season of the Deep. Now, Deadshot is our other Golden Gun option. This deals less individual damage, but instead you have 6 shots at your disposal. Additionally, causing solar ignitions while Golden Gun is active will refund a Golden Gun round. Now, this happens pretty often, especially against ads. And again, as crazy as it sounds, running into a group of ads, popping that Deadshot super, and then just clearing that entire room out, refunding shots, causing ignitions, all that jazz, this actually may be the play. Now, we have a couple of things that pair really well with Golden Gun to amplify the super even further. In terms of our aspects, you should definitely be using Knock 'em Down. This enhances our solar supers, giving Deadshot extra damage resistance and Marksman increased duration. For fragments, you have things like Ember of Combustion, which is going to be making final blows with our solar supers, cause targets to ignite, and of course create fire sprites. Also, Ember of Wonder, which generates more orbs of power after rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions, which is perfect here when paired with Golden Gun and Deadshot. Now, we also have a few exotic armor pieces that really amplify Golden Gun. The obvious one is Celestial Nighthawk. This comes with the exotic perk Hawkeye Hack, which is going to modify our Golden Gun into a single high damage shot. Enemies eliminated by the shots are also going to grant us super energy. This actually does wonder for just like one and done shots, tagging on DPS, and then on top of that, shredding champions, considering you're probably going to get the kill, especially in Solar Surge environments. Now, there have been other supers that have definitely surpassed Marksman with Celestial, but with this 20% buff, we believe Celestial is definitely going to make a comeback. Now, keep in mind, guys, it's the Marksman super that really benefits from Celestial Nighthawk, not necessarily Deadshot. And with that increase in precision damage, you're looking at Golden Gun Marksman doing just a hair under 250,000 damage paired with Celestial Nighthawk against Greg. Now, Golden Gun Deadshot, on the other hand, caps out at 124,528. So essentially half. So keep that in mind, guys. Always use Marksman with Celestial. And I know some people are like, Cross, that's a no-brainer. Dude, we've got some new players. You'd be surprised. Now, we also have one more exotic that we're going to be pairing with Golden Gun, and that is Star Eater Scales. Now, this comes with the perk Feast of Light, which will grant us additional super energy when picking up orbs of power. You can see how beneficial this can be, given that our super literally creates orbs of power on precision hits. Now, while our super energy is full, picking up orbs of power overcharges our super, giving us bonus damage. This is actually a 70% increase at 4 stacks. Star Eater also comes with some extra benefits like healing us on super cast while overcharged, as well as an overshield at max stacks. Now, Star Eater is really great because this actually enhances every single hunter super in the game. So it's not just tied specifically to Marksman or even just to Golden Gun. It's applicable everywhere. In our testing, using Star Eater scales with Golden Gun, we're actually able to get up to 307,581 damage with Marksman and 195,414 with Deadshot, which was surprising. Again, we may be in a scenario in which popping that Deadshot super next season with that 70% increase in damage at 4 stacks of Feast of Light, and then just clearing out an entire room. And considering the overshield and the survivability, this could be a play inside of Grandmasters. Now, moving on, we also have Arc Staff, which is getting a 20% buff inside of PvE. Guys, I really can't remember the last time I was compelled to use Arc Staff inside of PvE. Even after Arc 3.0 launch, the only time we were using Arc 3.0 inside of PvE was for its neutral game abilities, which I like, by the way. But we have a number of exotics that benefit Arc Staff. And if we get Arc Surge next season, which is very likely, oh, this is going to be cooking, fellas. I know everybody's crazy about gathering Storm, but inside of PvE, using the roaming feature of Arc Staff may be the play. Now, Arc Staff actually has 3 functions. We have a line attack, a heavy attack, as well as a blocking function to deflect enemy fire. Now, to get the most out of Arc Staff, you're gonna wanna do 2 to 3 line attacks to then follow up with a heavy attack. Throwing that heavy attack in every few hits is a nice way to really cap off that damage and seamlessly loop at the end there. On top of that, it can take out multiple enemies at once. The biggest benefit here though is that you're also able to make sure you're conserving your super energy as much as possible, since your heavy attacks consume more super than line attacks. Now, you can also block, but this of course drains your super depending on the exotic you're using though. Now, Arc Staff does not tie into any of our Arc 3.0 verbs, so in terms of aspects and fragments, nothing here is really going to benefit our Arc Staff super, but we do have some exotic options. We've already covered Star Eater Scales, so we know that's going to be applicable here in terms of boosting our super damage with that 70% buff at 4 stacks, but we also have another option, an option you may not have heard of in a very, very long time, Raiden Flux. Guys, this is literally an exotic I have not picked up since year 1 of Destiny 2, but it may be time to finally bring it back out. This comes with the exotic perk Synapse Junction, which reads, quick successive attacks with Arc Staff increases its damage output and duration. Now, this stacks up to a maximum of 3 stacks. At 1 stack, this is actually going to grant you a 13.5% increase in damage, 2 stacks is 28.8%, and at 3 stacks, it is a whopping 46.2% increase in damage. And this works both on the line attack and the heavy attacks. This also gives a slower passive super drain, so we can keep this going for even longer. So you can imagine popping this in a room and clearing everything, amplifying your damage with every successive hit. And again, the beautiful thing about this is that it's successive attacks that buffs the damage, not successive kills. So keep that in mind, guys. If you want to pop this against a high health target, you're literally going to be able to boost your damage just by landing attacks. Now, another exotic which I think is on everyone's radar is Raiju's Harness. I've seen it used inside of PvP even to this day, but this exotic allows us to deactivate our Arc Staff early to save a portion of our super energy. Additionally, guarding with Arc Staff consumes super energy more slowly when not attacking, and guarding does not consume extra super energy like it normally does. Now, this sounds really, really good. Even inside of PvE, pop your super, block some damage, kill some targets, and then bam, you can cancel your super and conserve some of that energy for the next encounter. They can just go around, collect some orbs, but you could top off that super for the next engagement. Again, you don't get the potency that Raiden Flux grants, but you do get that ease of use and conservation. Now, something we are unsure about is what is the potential of Blight Ranger. You see, blocking and redirecting attacks with our Arc Staff deals massively increased damage and generate orbs of power for our allies. As well, guarding with the Arc Staff does not consume extra super energy. Now, according to them, the reflected projectiles can deal up to 650% more damage to targets, which is pretty crazy, but kind of niche. Blight Ranger really has not established itself at all for us anywhere, for both PvE or for PvP. On top of that, I'm under the assumption that that 20% buff that's being handed out to Arc Staff won't apply here to Blight Ranger. Again, we'll do all kinds of testing on this, guys, pre and post, so of course we'll let you know. And if you know of a way of really optimizing Blight Ranger inside of PvE, guys, let us know. I'm curious. Now moving on over to our Night Stalker Hunters. This is gonna sound crazy, but Spectral Blades may actually be meta in PvE. I know, some of you like, Cross, what are you smoking? Now, there's some similarities between Spectral Blades and Arc Staff, most notably Spectral Blades and Blade Dancer from back inside of Destiny 1, but Spectral Blades has a line attack and a heavy attack. Now, the heavy attack actually allows you to go back into stealth, which synergizes perfectly here with Void 3.0. Now for the changes. Next season, we're getting a PvE damage buff of 35%. Guys, that is a whopper. On top of that, your heavy attack is now going to weaken targets on hit. Additionally, Bungie has also fixed an issue causing some right-handed Spectral Blade attacks to fail to connect. So essentially, we're getting more consistency, allowing us to hit all of our attacks, even at maximum attack speed, on top of the buff and the weaken from our heavy attack. Now, similar to Arc Staff, as well as other supers in the game, the heavy attack from Spectral Blades uses up more super energy. So for optimal use, you mainly want to use your line attack attack, and then throw in a heavy attack every 3 hits or so, or if you're trying to get that debuff off, to then follow up with some light attacks. I like to use it at the end of my super just to go back into stealth as well if I've already cleared out all the ads. Now, despite the 35% buff here being a huge bump in damage, it's that weaken effect from the heavy attack that's going to be so nasty. We're talking a 15% debuff that's going to stack with that 35% buff. And although we do have other ways of debuffing enemies, the fact that you're going to be able to apply this in super by yourself is what makes this so good. And you can imagine in things like Void Surge environments how nasty Spectral Blades is going to be. Now, for our exotic options, we have Star Eater Scales, which we've already covered, which again synergizes with all of our supers. But I actually want to bring up an exotic that most of us have forgotten about, and that's Gwisin's Vest. This comes with the exotic perk Roving Assassin, where each Spectral Blades kill you make before going into stealth will restore more of your super energy. Now, looking at the numbers provided by Dim, after 1 kill, this refunds 11.1%, 2 kills is 14.3%, 3 kills is 16.5%, 4 kills 16.9%, 5 kills 17.1%. You can see the diminishing returns here. Now, when we tested this out, we went straight away into trying to get those 5 kills, then going invis. And we found that this just didn't really work as we already used up so much super energy running to our targets. Getting our light attack hits, then the heavy kill to go invis, that amount of super it gave still was not really enough to even get to the next group of ads. I think optimally to get the most out of Gwisin Vest and Spectral Blades, you just want to go for the 3 kills and then go for the heavy. Kill an ad at the same time, refresh your super, and considering the diminishing returns after 3 kills, that seems to be the gameplay loop here. Regardless though, if done correctly, you're going to be able to hang on to your Spectral Blade super for quite a long time, making Gwisin Vest, especially when you pair in the heavy attack debuff, a very nasty option. Now, I know someone is going to bring up, what about Gathering Stormcross? It was mentioned in the blog post. Keep in mind, fellas, this is a PvP change only. Direct impact damage versus players was increased from 200 to 300, and the delayed lightning strike damage versus players was increased from 300 to 500, and the lingering tick damage versus players went from 40 to 60. It's also going to now deal increased damage versus Wells of Radiance, as well as Ward of Dawn. But again, all of this is PvP focus. And even though Gathering Storm is a great PvE super, inside of PvP, it was lacking. So I'm happy to see this. So with those super changes announced, I really do think that roaming supers are going to really integrate themselves into the PvE meta next season, even in in-game content. And when we dive into the Warlock and Titan changes, it's really going to start to flesh out in your mind how different you're going to handle encounters going forward. And even back before the launch of Lightfall, in one of Bungie's big blog posts, they mentioned they wanted to give roaming supers some more use inside of PvE. And they actually made a change to the maximum amount of orbs of power that can be generated from 5 to 7 while getting kills in your roaming super. And it's interesting because it's like Bungie saw that that wasn't enough to get us to use roaming supers again. So now they're going across the board and buffing the damage. Now that we've fleshed out and discussed everything to do with supers though, let's quickly swap topics and take a look at hunter abilities that are getting retuned. Being so many years into Destiny 2, almost every ability in the game across all classes has some exotic armor piece that buffs said ability. So we're going to touch on each of those as well as go through each ability change. That way you know exactly what exotic armor pieces to try to get a hold of, to get high stat rolls of, or to at least dust off before season 21. First off, we've got to talk about Snare Bomb. Snare Bomb and its ability gives you a throwable smoke bomb, which attaches to the surface and then pings enemy radar. It also weakens targets on detonation. So the only change here is to the duration of the weaken effect, which is going from 4 seconds to 8 seconds. A considerable and much needed increase, as Snare Bomb is the main avenue for hunters to cause weaken within their void kits, excluding Trapper's Ambush and Echo Thunder Mining. Now, Trapper's Ambush is arguably the least used void aspect on Hunter because its weaken effect triggered via the quickfall ability lasts 10 seconds already. There's no confirmation as to if this duration will be touched at all though. Now, as far as exotics that pair really well with Hunter Snare Bomb, you've got Khepri Sting and you got Omnioculus. Khepri Sting comes with the exotic perk Touch of Venom, where punching someone with full melee energy will instantly cast Smoke Bomb. Your Smoke Bomb deals 50% increased damage. It has a 500% additional recharge rate when stuck to a surface, and it grants you True Sight for 3 seconds after damaging a target. So you're gonna get that double weakened duration, which is a 15% debuff, plus all those exotic benefits. Right now, Khepri is far from a meta option in PvE. I think most people use it for wall hacks inside of PvP, and I don't really think that this change is really gonna shake things up for Khepris. Now, on the other hand though, we have Omnioculus. This is a very nice buff because Omnioculus comes with the perk Beyond the Veil, where you gain a second smoke bomb charge and have a 10% damage resistance while invisible. Now, when you make an ally invisible, they gain 10% damage resist while invisible, and you gain 50% melee energy. This is where Trapper's Ambush is usually used, as it makes your smoke bombs cause invisibility. Now, while Omnioculus builds tend to focus on you throwing smoke bombs at your feet or your teammates' feet in order to provide invisibility and damage resist, having 2 of them, now with 8 seconds of a weaken effect will also be a great way to weaken an entire room of enemies. Because again, that smoke has an AoE effect, and you have double the duration now. Combined with the fact that Trapper's Ambush is getting an increase to its fragment slot to allow for 2 fragments instead of just 1, this just opens up more options for Omnioculus center builds, and I definitely think it's going to be a must-have exotic for my hunters next season. Now let's talk about solar melee abilities, primarily throwing knives. The proximity throwing knife is actually seeing its detonation damage versus players reduced from 105 to 90, but its impact damage is being increased against players from 14 to 20. It's still a nerf though, and the idea here is to make sure that this knife is being utilized more accurately. And even though you could still attach it to surfaces, it won't do as much explosive damage when an enemy steps over it. Now this change comes as a response from Bungie to shift the overwhelming popularity of the proximity and weighted knife versus other solar melee abilities. Now the damage output for proximity knife is a bit further toward direct impacts, and if you're planning on utilizing these knives, there's still no better exotic than of course Caliban's hand. This comes with the trait Roastum, where your proximity knife scorches targets that it damages with its explosions, or ignites targets on final blows. And after throwing a proxy knife, you gain increased melee regeneration until the knife explodes. Now the scorch stacks here is really nice, as it provides 60 scorch, and the melee regeneration is an additional 500%. The beautiful thing about this is when pairing it with other neutral abilities, right? You can cause ignitions when following up, say, a grenade throw and a knife throw, taking out large groups of enemies together. You can lock down an area, and if it happens to clip an enemy that's weak, kabloomy, you got ignitions. Now keep in mind, this is still a nerf here, the proxy knife, but in some ways, that's gonna push me to use Caliban's hand even more, as I'm gonna want to rely more on buffing my proxy knife. Now proxy knives are still gonna be good. It's still a very easy way to proc things like Radiant with Ember of Torches, which only requires you to land a hit with a charged melee to get Radiant, meaning even the bare minimum explosion damage on an enemy with proxy knife will make you Radiant. Now we need to mention the weighted knife, as it's also getting tuned, as it's also a very popular pick for hunters. This knife deals extra precision damage and causes scorched targets to ignite. Now precision final blows immediately recharge your class ability. The change here is strictly for mouse and keyboard users, and it's getting reduced minimum tracking shape size by 25% and maximum tracking shape size by 10%. Now this shape grows over 0.5 seconds after the projectile is thrown. This is meant to reduce the ease of use for weighted knife, primarily for mouse and keyboard users. Now the go-to exotic for weighted knife, of course, is Arthur's Embrace, which has the perk Skittering Stinger, where weighted knife gains a second bounce. Rapid precision hits with your weapons grant weighted knife a significant damage bonus and the ability to stun unshielded combatants for a short time. You can also stun unstoppable champions when a weighted knife is empowered, and the damage bonus you get for scoring rapid precision hits is 200% in PvE and 100% inside of PvP. And this only requires 3 precision hits within 2.5 seconds of each other. Now this knife and the exotic is mainly used inside of PvP because of the current ease of use that it has. Now those headshots, now you got those insta-kill knives. Pairing any of these knives with knock 'em down aspect is the way to go, since final blows while radiant will refund your knife, allowing you to chain headshot knife kills in PvP if you got the aim for it. Now granted, on mouse and keyboard, this is going to be harder to do. To what degree though? We'll just have to see. But it does still have great use inside of PvE, with the ability to once again chain those knife kills back to back while radiant, as well as the 200% increase in damage from Arthur's Embrace and the ability to stun unstoppable champions. There's some use here, but we don't see either of these knife changes affecting much inside of PvE. Now lastly, we have the lightweight knife, which no one really cares about. This is a quick throwing knife that deals moderate damage, and precision hits with this knife makes you radiant. Now the change it's receiving is to its projectile speed, which is going from 30 meters per second to now 40, which is a significant bump. It's also getting its tracking shape size increased by 20%. Simply put, this is going to make lightweight knife easier to use for a variety of players, thanks to its tracking size and its increased projectile speed. We'll see exactly how much use that's going to increase inside of PvP or PvE, but for my players that are looking to utilize this to the fullest, you do have exotics like Ophidia Spathe, which grants you 2 knives. Now the next ability we need to bring up is our Hunter Strand melee ability, Threaded Spike. Now this is a rope dart that bounces between targets, severing them. The dart returns and it refunds melee energy if caught based on the number of targets it hits. This is getting a ton of buffs that we think is going to make this melee really good next season. First, it's getting an increase to its projectile travel range before returning to the player's by 30%. It's also getting increase in damage versus PvP Cabans by a whopping 55%. Also slightly reduced dart speed returning to the player, making it easier to catch, and increased energy gain for catching the darts and enemies hit. And another beautiful thing, it can now pierce Cabal phalanx shields. Now Bungie stated it will also no longer prioritize the catch action over the grapple melee if an enemy target is within grapple melee range. And the idea here, guys, is that this is going to make this melee much easier to use and more rewarding when you use it correctly. Now we saw immediately in the comment section about pairing this with Assassin's Cowl. We're actually bringing this up because I hope Bungie fixes this before next season. Unfortunately, there's a strange interaction with Assassin's Cowl when it comes to the perk Vanishing Execution, where power melee final blows grant invisibility and restore a portion of health and shields. Seems like something that was synergized perfectly here with Threaded Spike, but it doesn't. What ends up happening with Threaded Spike is that once you throw the melee and it gets a kill and you go invisible, the rope dart doesn't return to you. It's as if the rope dart can't see you. And then of course it can't track to you for you to catch. Most definitely a bug, but it's something that I hope Bungie does fix, as the synergy here would be beautiful to see once we got that buff to Threaded Spike. And for those wondering, Ophidia Spathe also does not synergize with Threaded Spike, so there really isn't a lot of exotics that synergize with Threaded Spike. Granted, this could be a perfect opportunity for Bungie to give us a new exotic. Now our last hunter ability comes from one of our aspects, Gunpowder Gamble. Side note, Gunpowder Gamble is actually getting a fragment slot increase from 1 to 2, so we're already getting a buff out the gate. Now it's not the only aspect that's getting this buff. You've got aspects like Trapper's Ambush, Shatter Dive. Those aspects are also going from 1 to 2 fragments, which by the way can change builds significantly. But I want to talk about how Gunpowder Gamble works. Essentially, you have to get 5 kills with solar abilities, solar debuffs, or solar weapon kills, and this will charge a solar grenade that can be thrown and shot mid-air to cause ignitions. It's a pretty fun aspect, but it's not really used much outside of the launch of Solar 3.0 when people were trying it out. Bungie is actually changing the cooldown though of Gunpowder Gamble from 12 seconds down to 6 seconds, aka meaning more of these solar grenades. We're hoping with that, also the combination of an extra fragment, some people may be able to utilize Gunpowder Gamble, and I would love to in-game content. Now in terms of exotic pairings for Gunpowder Gamble, we don't really have anything that directly buffs this, but we do have some exotics that can pair alongside it and helping you get solar kills. We've got good old Frosties. This exotic increases grenade, melee, and dodge regeneration while sprinting. This of course grants you more solar melees and grenades faster to help you get those charges for Gunpowder Gamble. The other one is Young Ahamkara Spine, which increases trip mine grenade duration and blast radius. Also, ability damage grants trip mine grenade energy. Now there's an interesting interaction right now where if you get kills with your trip mine grenade, this is going to charge Gunpowder Gamble, and then getting kills with Gunpowder Gamble charges your trip mine grenade. So again, not necessarily buffing the damage or anything like that for Gunpowder Gamble directly, but yes, ability uptime here, you see some definite synergy with the ability to throw back-to-back grenades. Now some of the other exotics that we went over earlier as well would also be great pairings here. Things like Caliban's Hand, Arthur's Embrace, Ophidia Spathe. Anything that's really going to help you get more ability kills will obviously benefit Gunpowder Gamble. And of course, getting solar energy weapon kills is another very easy way to proc Gunpowder Gamble. Guys, no lie, we're going to try to make some builds with it next season. I would love to tell you, hey, the meta for the new dungeon is in fact Gunpowder Gamble. So guys, there it is. Those are all the changes coming to Hunters in Season 21. Hopefully we didn't miss anything, but if we did, feel free to let us know in the comments down below. We're going to have similar style videos though for Titans and Warlocks, as well as an overview for our super damage and of course rankings for those supers. I too want to know what is currently the best and what will be the best next season. I think there's a lot of play to be made for roaming supers though. That combined with some of these neutral game buffs and extra fragments that we can hold, we've got some major shifts coming to our current builds. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.